Hey guys, it's Mahel here, and today I'm going to be bringing you what is probably my most requested video so far, and it is an A-level business revision video. And in this video specifically, I'm going to be teaching you how to make notes to effectively revise for A-level business. But before I get into that, if you haven't already, then make sure to subscribe and turn post notifications on so that you don't miss a single video like this one or a future one. And without further ado, let's get into it. First things first, if you haven't already, then make sure you watch my previous video on A-level business, and you can see that over here. I go through where you can revise and what materials I used and whatnot. It was a really helpful video, and it's a starting point to your A-level business revision. And then once you've watched that, come back to this video. However, if you have already watched that video, then make sure to keep watching this one. So first things first, I recommend going through the specification, which can be found on AQA's website, to create a color-coded checklist of what you're confident about, what you're somewhat confident about, and what you're not confident about. Every unit has subtopics in the specification, and there's just bullet points to talk about different bits of each unit. And so you can create your own checklist to color code. Using that, you know what you're confident with, what you're somewhat confident with, and what you're not confident with. Based on this, you can order your revision going from what you're not confident with at the beginning and then ending your revision with what you're confident about the most. After all, what's the point in going in chronological order from 3.1 to 3.10 when, for example, you know so much about 3.2 but you don't know so much about 3.9? It doesn't make sense. You might as well go through your weaker topics first and then move on to your stronger ones. So you know what your weak topics are, and you want to start making notes to revise those topics and really get it in your head. Let me tell you, flashcards are your friend, and not only flashcards but mind maps too. The thing I like about flashcards and mind maps is that it forces you to get information and condense it down onto one page. Obviously, if you're doing a mind map, you're probably doing it on an A4 sheet or maybe even A3. I would actually recommend A4 because it's more condensed than, say, A3. And if you're making a flashcard, then it's on A5, which is even more condensed than A4 or A3. The reason this is good is because it enables you to identify what information is really important and what isn't. And by doing so, your notes will be information that is relevant and not something, for example, like, oh, a business provides goods and services to customers, which, you know what, yes, you need to know that for the exam, but realistically, it's probably not going to come up. You can use flashcards and mind maps to really revise key concepts and theories such as Maslow's hierarchy of needs or Porter's 5 forces. Porter's 5 forces is a very popular model, and I really recommend that you use a mind map for this one specifically. And the reason I like mind maps is because you put your theory in the middle and then create branches of what each force is, and then after each force you create another branch explaining it a bit. But because you're limited as to how much you can write, you will only write the most important bits of information. So come closer to exam time, you're literally not reading over the entire content and only going over the relevant bits, making sure that you're ready for the exam. Because literally, if you create bullet point answers to different topics or just questions, then you can literally copy those bullet points from your notes straight onto the exam paper and add context if it comes up in an exam question. This means that you spend less time in an exam faffing around and thinking, so I made these notes and I copied down literally everything. I made sure that the header was in pink and the text was in blue and it looks all colourful, but really, what's important? I don't know. And you're not just looking at the question thinking, I know so much, but what's actually important? Instead, this way, you're only going to be noting down the important bits. And so you can go into the exam and be like, right, I know this and this is relevant. How do I apply it to the context? Put it down, done. Less time thinking about all the notes that you made and more time thinking about how to just apply it. Another reason flashcards were helpful for me for A-level business specifically was that I was able to put a theory name on one side and then put the information on another side, shuffle these flashcards around, and then literally I could whip out one flashcard and be like, oh, Griner's growth model, and then try and remember as much as I can, and then flip the flashcard around, see if I missed anything, and then learn accordingly. Whereas, for example, let's say I had a pucker pad full of notes in chronological order, and let's assume all of this was filled with basically the textbook all just copied out onto a pucker pad, which is, you know what, some people do it, they literally just copy out the textbook onto a different piece of paper, which is kind of pointless. Instead of just doing that, you are learning the most important bits because you have already gone through a textbook, a video, and identified what's important and what's not. And by doing so, you're processing the information and therefore reinforcing it in your head, ready for the exam. Also, by putting theories and key concepts onto a flashcard, because the flashcard is A5 typically, there is less room for you to put information on, especially if the other side is taken up by the flashcard's name. So you only have one side of A5, and therefore only the most crucial bits of information about a key theory or concept is going onto that flashcard, and that is what I like about flashcards. However, if a theory or topic is a bit more in depth, like there's more information to it, then that is where I recommend using mind maps instead. Personally, I'd say use YouTube videos to learn topics, and then if necessary, if you have the time, then use textbooks to find what you found on YouTube and then add to your notes. So, like I say, video first, then textbook. I wouldn't do it the other way around. Honestly, going through a textbook is just too time consuming, and then there's a problem of you have to identify what's important and what's not, whereas videos usually are more condensed than textbooks. And that's why I say, if the video is enough, then that's good. If it's not, go through a textbook and just add a little bit more. And there are many YouTube channels on YouTube that are very helpful, and I'm going to go through them now. So good YouTube channels include Mr. Evans Business, because he has covered every single unit in the AQA A-level business specification from 3.1 to 3.10 and has playlists for each of these topics. So let's say you wanted to find something in 3.7, you can literally go onto this playlist called 3.7 and watch the videos just like that. Easy to find. That is what I like about Mr. Evans Business, and he also replies to your comments. You have Tutor to You, who have done some really good videos in the past. They've done these like live streams for multiple choice questions for paper 1, I believe it is. So just really good, and they've also covered like paper 2 and paper 3. And then you also have Taking a Biz, who's covered different theories, so he's also good as well. Those links will be in the description below, but I personally would say Mr. Evans Business was the most helpful to me, as I went from a D to an A when I started using him. Personally, I'm not a fan of writing out notes in full, and I like to put my notes in bullet point form. The reason being is because when I read back through my notes, if it's literally just an essay of notes, I'm going to be really disinterested. I'm going to be like, I give up. Whereas if it's just bullet points and straight to the point, I'll know what I need to know is everything on that page, rather than having to pick out bits of information, and so it's just easier to learn. I'd recommend using past paper questions to create bullet point answers to those questions, as 16+ mark questions often include a key concept or theory such as globalization, outsourcing, or stakeholder mapping, and therefore by making notes to those questions, so literally creating bullet point answers to those questions, not only are you tackling the question, you're also learning about the theory itself and in the context of an exam question. So if that question comes up again, or a scenario comes up where there's an exam question but you can apply a theory that's been used in a previous exam question, you'll know what to do and you'll be able to get straight to the point. Often it's easier to make notes using past paper questions than it is to just use textbooks, for example, because again, you're making your notes in context to an exam question, and at the end of the day, it's not about knowing the content, it's about being able to tackle a question with context and your context being, for example, a real life example or a theory or a key concept. You might be wondering, how do you learn the formulas though? How do you make notes on the formulas? And let me tell you, flashcards are good to make your formula. So for example, let's say gearing or current assets, I think it was. Anyways, gearing, there's a formula for that. Let's just use that as an example. You could put that formula onto a flashcard and simply learn like that. Literally have gearing on one side and then the formula on the other. However, I don't believe this is effective, as you'll probably end up forgetting the formula, and let's say you remember it but you haven't practiced using it, you probably won't even know how to actually apply it and may make a mistake in the exam. Therefore, the best way to make notes on formulas is to actually use it. So for example, one side have gearing, on the other side have the actual formula in raw, and then have an example question, so, and show all the working out on that flashcard. And then after you've got to a point where you remember the formula, and then just practice it in different questions. So there's different textbooks, like I said before, it is a new specification, so there aren't many past paper questions, so use different textbooks. Those textbooks were in the description below, by the way, the ones I recommend, and they will have questions on different maths questions or just questions in general relating to A-level business. By applying formulas to actual questions, not only are you reinforcing that formula into your head, you also learn how to actually use a formula. So come to the exam, you're not going to be sitting there panicking thinking, oh, I know the formula but I have no idea what it means, how do I apply it? As I said just now, there will be a list of textbooks in the description below, and these are the textbooks that I personally purchased. And the biggest lifesaver was the maths textbook that's in the description. So it's a textbook that's just focuses on business maths, so different questions about gearing or anything that's maths related to business. And honestly, without this textbook, I don't even know if I would have got an A or not. Last but not least, like I said previously, making full notes is often a waste of time and unnecessary. So just focus on what's important and what isn't. And like I said before, if you're confident with something to the point where you don't even need to look at again, there's no point in making notes. Just spend that time instead making notes on your weaker areas. You don't even have to just make notes once for a topic and then leave it like that. If you're still not confident, make notes again. Keep rewriting and rewriting and rewriting until you learn it. At the end of the day, it is your learning, and so it's down to you how you remember information. But that is basically going to be it for this video. I hope you did enjoy it, and I hope it has been helpful to you. If you did enjoy it, then make sure to leave a like below and subscribe. Follow me on social media, that's at MahelX on Twitter, at MahelCard on Instagram, and official MahelCard on Facebook. Make sure to let me know in the comments below if this video has been helpful to you and what else you would like to see from me. We're getting closer and closer to exams. I even have my own exams 20 days from now, which is just scary. My first year university exams. So I'll be taking you through that as well through the use of study vlogs. But this has been Mahel, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.